Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new Trains Are Awesome video. Today's trip report starts in Portland, Oregon, and we're about to ride one of Amtrak's most legendary trains, the Empire Builder to Chicago. We've got a coach ticket, and this trip report was filmed from March 1st through March 3rd, 2022, when Amtrak had a buy one, bring one sale. The normal coach fare is $140, but because of this sale, we only spent $70 each to travel from Portland to Chicago. Join us as we cross Glacier National Park and endless prairies towards Chicago. If you love train travel, hit that subscribe button. We upload at least once a week, and this way you won't miss any of our content. You can also join our community on Patreon. Your support gives you access to cool features such as early video releases. And finally, follow us on our social media, Instagram and TikTok. Portland Union Station was opened in 1896. The initial plans for the station had it becoming the world's largest station, but the plans were scaled down a little bit before construction. I still think it's one of the most beautiful station buildings in America. This is very pretty. On its interior, Portland Union Station has a large waiting area. This waiting area has wooden benches. More comfortable seats are found in the Metropolitan Lounge, which is reserved for passengers with sleeping car tickets. Not us today. Other than that, there is a railroad cafe, which has a select menu of snacks and drinks, as well as a large collection of railroad memorabilia. I ended up buying an Amtrak t-shirt. I'm sure you've seen me wear it in other videos. The Empire Builder is an Amtrak route that connects either Seattle or Portland to Chicago. The distance is about 2,200 miles or 3,500 kilometers, and it's a two-night train. Now we have a coach ticket today, but because we're on the Portland section going to Chicago, we get Amtrak's observation car, like the car with the panoramic windows and the seats facing outside. So I'm really thrilled about that. And that's completely accessible to coach passengers. So in Spokane, Washington, around midnight today, the Portland section and the Seattle section will combine and travel towards Chicago as one long train. A few minutes before departure, passengers for the Empire Builder were called to board the train. We lined up, headed into kind of a secondary waiting room, almost like a gate area where our tickets were scanned. And then we were welcomed onto the platform. Here, Bear's pointing out the Metropolitan Lounge I mentioned earlier. On our left are the Amtrak Superliner cars that'll bring us all the way to Chicago, Illinois. Amtrak deploys these double-deck Superliner cars on all their western long-distance routes. In my experience, these Superliner cars are the most comfortable trains that Amtrak has. They were built in the 1970s, and a coach car is made up of a 2x2 configuration in airline-style forward-facing seats. The seats are much wider and more cushioned than most train seats around the world, which will be good because we will be spending 2 nights in them. They come with power sockets, an excellent recline, space to load your baggage in the baggage racks above, and a lot of leg room. Besides having an amazing recline, these Superliner seats also feature a leg rest, so you can put your feet up. So we picked some pretty great seats, if I do say so myself. We're at the very front of our coach car, and right next to us is the lounge car. That's the big observation car.
This is Amtrak train number 28, the Empire Builder, heading to Chicago. Folks, please observe signs
Right on time, we depart Portland Union Station. This is the beginning of a 45-hour train journey to Chicago. The first train we notice out of the window is this funny-looking Talgo train set. This is used by the Amtrak Cascades service, a state-supported service that runs between Eugene, Oregon, and Vancouver, Canada, via Portland and Seattle. I hope to be able to come back to Portland or Seattle in time to try out one of these Talgo trains before they're taken out of service. Talgo is a Spanish train manufacturer that specializes in these unique-looking trains made up of very short rail cars that have two cars balancing on one axle. With the North American loading gauge, they're so much smaller than the locomotive and the cab car that they're attached to. It looks kind of funny. Our journey today will mostly be on railroad tracks of freight company BNSF, and immediately after leaving Portland Union Station, we run on BNSF tracks towards Washington State. So obviously these coach seats are great, but the highlight of any Western Amtrak route is the Sightseer Lounge, and Bear over here has never been in one, so do you want to go check it out?
Excited.
I guess nobody else is feeling inspired to be in here yet. This is what makes Amtrak such an amazing experience. So the observation car basically has two types of seats. You've got these like leathery booths, and then you've got the fabric window-facing seats. In my experience, these booths are slightly more comfortable, but both of them provide this unique panoramic viewing experience. You can plug your phone in just like at your seat. The cafe is down there, which still open in a little bit, but because this is a superliner car, you're also allowed to bring your own food into the lounge car. While the lounge car has many of the same amenities as the coach seats, in my experience the purpose is very different. Amtrak lounge cars foster community. There's of course the sharing of food in this car, but there are also seats that, while they face the windows, also kind of face towards each other, allowing people to engage in conversation and marvel about the sights they see out the window together. I remember summer nights aboard the Southwest Chief where I got to know so many new people. Right now, the lounge car is the frontmost car on our train, directly next to the locomotive, but in Spokane, Washington, a whole other consist coming from Seattle will be attached to the front of our train. The cafe car is below the lounge car, and passengers can easily get the food from the cafe and bring it up to one of the seats in the lounge car. Within the first few minutes of our 45-hour journey, our train crosses the Columbia River. The Columbia River is an over 1,200-mile-long river that originates in British Columbia, a Canadian province, and flows through Washington, eventually forming the border between the U.S. states of Washington and Oregon. Crossing the Columbia means we've headed into Vancouver, Washington. Often confused with Vancouver, not too far away in Canada, Vancouver, Washington is basically a northern suburb of Portland that lies in the state of Washington. Immediately before Vancouver Station, our line splits from the line headed north to Seattle, and so the platform is in a V shape, much like Clybourne Station on Metro's Union Pacific lines in Chicago. After Vancouver, our train will make a right and head east towards Chicago. For the first several hours of the journey, our line will be paralleling the Columbia River. The BNSF tracks are on the north bank of the river in Washington State, and Union Pacific has tracks on the opposite bank in Oregon. So the views on this section of the train will be of Oregon, but from Washington. Now, it is often said that the Portland section of the Empire Builder is the more scenic section, and although I haven't been on the Seattle section, I can certainly vouch for the Portland section. Having the Sightseer Lounge before anybody else does is already an added bonus, but these Columbia River views are really something else. problem on these trains is there's just so much scenery. Every time I record something better shows up, and I'm like, you need to see this. Some footage is hard to capture, like this waterfall, and really to experience the train, you have to ride it yourself. So I made sure to focus more on actually looking out the window than capturing video of the things I saw. So there's normal people that pack snacks, and then there's people that buy rotisserie turkeys.
I'm usually vegetarian.
No, you're not. No way. The farther inland we travel, the more impressive the Columbia River views become. On our left, it's mostly cliffs and occasionally a tunnel, which turns the entire observation car dark. Although sometimes glimpses of a national forest are available. This national forest includes Mount St. Helens, the famous volcano that erupted in 1980 and lost a large chunk of its mass. As night falls over the river, the views become even more enchanting.
I didn't know we had this one.
As night falls, the little Oregon towns across the river begin to light up, and this makes the views even more enchanting. Eventually, our train crosses the Columbia River as it no longer forms the border, and we continue slightly north towards Spokane. Now, most stops along the way are just to let people on and off, but occasionally there are fresh air stops, or smoke stops. Pasco will be the first one. Pasco, Washington, the first fresh air stop. We're going to be here for about 5 minutes. I think I'm going to take a nap because the next stop is Spokane, and that's not for another 3 hours. So it looks like the Portland section is 2 sleeper cars. That's our coach car. And then the observation car with, of course, P42 up front. It's got to be at least 50 degrees out here. It feels really nice, even though it's 9 in the evening. I'm going to switch with Bear real quick so he can have a breath of fresh air too. Actually, before I take a nap, let's check out the bathrooms on the Superliner. Always make sure to knock and to lock the door when you're inside. I've walked in on plenty of people. So this is the accessible toilet. As you can see, it's very wide. Got a sink that works. Fully stocked soap, fully stocked toilet paper. My face. See? That's what I mean. A lot more toilet paper, trash can, and to flush, the button is right there. So I'm going to change now, and you are not going to watch. Coach passengers do not have access to a shower for the entirety of the trip, so it's important to freshen up in these bathrooms. I brushed my teeth, and Lindsay, my wife, who wasn't able to travel with us this time, encouraged me to do my skincare routine. I happily obeyed because I miss you a lot. Then it was time to head up, plug in my phone, and grab my Amtrak comfort pack that I had bought on the Southwest Chief last year. I reclined the seat, laid back, and took a nice nap. Three hours later, we slowed into Spokane, Washington. This was going to be a long stop. Spokane, Washington. 7 hours after boarding, we've made it to the very eastern end of the state. And this is where our train will combine with the Seattle section in about an hour. Look at these cute little wooden carts Amtrak uses to move the bags. Because the Portland segment of the Empire Builder makes such a long stop in Spokane, the station is used as an opportunity to service the train. Passengers are allowed, of course, to walk around on the platform, catch some fresh air, but they're also allowed to leave the station and go into the city if they so desire. Of course, the train will leave with or without its passengers, so this is always something you need to be mindful of. Another thing to remember in Spokane is that if you do leave the station, you will be required to wait with the boarding passengers until they are allowed to board, even though you already have a seat on the train. Bear actually went into the city and got some food. We are going to look at the combining of the Portland and Seattle sections. So the first thing that happens is the cover guarding the observation car from the locomotive is removed. Then the locomotive detaches from the train. Would you look at that? A rake of 4 Superliner cars with no engine attached to it, all lonely at the platform. Don't worry, your Seattle buddies will come soon. So with no head end power coming from a locomotive, do these Superliners have like a battery that allows the essential lights to remain on? And yes, it was very dark on board. Alright, the section from Seattle should be here in about 10 minutes. It's supposed to be 48 degrees out here. It feels a little bit chillier than that. Looks like Spokane itself is a decently sized city. There's an interesting looking building over there. So it looks like it's going to back into the station before it lets any of those passengers out. Our locomotive, which pulled the Portland segment, will be the front locomotive all the way to Chicago, so it's getting out of the way so that the Seattle locomotive can push its cars into ours. This goes very slowly and carefully, of course. Portland and Seattle sections united. Now all that's left is for the two P-42s to connect to each other. Now we have one long Empire Builder all the way down to Chicago. Time to get back on board. I was soon reunited with Bear, and it was time to go to sleep for real. As we left Spokane, the westbound Empire Builder actually just pulled in. Thank you so much for watching today. Next week, we will publish part 2 of the trip report aboard the Empire Builder with some of the most breathtaking scenery along the entire route, Glacier National Park and the prairies of Montana and North Dakota. If you haven't already, subscribe to Trains Are Awesome so you don't miss it, and we'll see you next time.